Hello. Hi. Hey, how you doing? And welcome to a brand new visual novel read through. This one for a game that I only found out recently that I had been pronouncing wrong since I originally read it in like 2007 or 2008. This is Narcissu, which I had been pronouncing as Narcissu because the katakana for this game is Narukisosu. So I had just kind of always thought that it would be Narcissu with the romanization, but I was wrong, apparently. So welcome. This one's gonna be a little different than our standard fare. This is not going to be a find love or die trying. This is not even going to be as positive or uplifting as Flowers, maybe, but it might be in a different way. But it's definitely a different vibe. So I'll just drop a warning up front that if you don't want to be maybe kind of depressed, despite the fact that I don't really feel that this game is a downer, but it definitely deals with a lot of heavy themes. And if you're not in the brain space to want to deal with heavy themes, totally get that. And if you need to bounce now, that's totally fine. But this is definitely going to be dealing with some pretty heavy stuff. I guess that's all I wanted to get out of the way first. So we're going to go ahead and this is the Narcissu 1 and 2 collection that you can get on Steam. I do believe this is free. So if you like what you see and want to just read it yourself, you can just go grab this yourself. I'm almost pretty sure that this is still free. This was free when I read it back in the day. Like, I don't know that other than the anniversary collection DLC that was released in 2017, I want to say, I don't think that they've ever really charged for this game other than maybe fan discs and stuff like that. But anyway, you can see we have two games. We are obviously going to play the first one, despite the fact that Narcissu's second side is a prequel. And I've never read that one. So we are going to travel back to the wild and wonderful world of 2007 and 2008. When I read this, I have not read it since. So it's not 100% fresh for me, but it's definitely going to be fresh in a lot of ways that I probably don't remember. There are two translations, the Augulus and the GP32, the Insani. This is the one that I read back in the day, and it read fine. I tested out the Augulus, and it felt a little more literal and stilted, so I wasn't the biggest fan. So we're just going to stick with the Insani, whatever that's pronounced, like GP32. And we're actually going to do this one unvoiced for a couple of reasons. I believe the first time I read this, it was unvoiced. And people have told me that they do like it when I read everything. I don't know why. I can't stand the sound of my own voice. And especially now that it's coming through this new microphone that gives you a fuller profile of my voice. Anyway, we're going to do the unvoiced version, and I'm going to read everything. This is not going to be the standard for all visual novels going forward. It's just this one is much shorter, so I'm throwing y'all a bone. So, yeah, here we go. We're just going to jump right in. Here we go. On a blindingly bright day, on that very day of winter, from the July 2004 police statistics on suicide. Like I said, might be your clue as to maybe this not being the happiest video game in the world. But I still think it's got a lot of good things to say. So stick around if you like games that have good things to say. I don't know. Spring 1996, Satsumi. True, I wasn't very healthy ever since I was a child. Even so, I attended elementary school like all the others, and during summer breaks, I often played until I was utterly tanned. June, shortly after my entry into middle school, the day after I had ordered a swimsuit for use the next month, my first hospitalization. On a day just before the first semester midterms, on a day when the first drops of rain were so cruelly cold. Falling from amidst the pure white of the overcast sky. Of course, the first time it happened, all my classmates came to visit me almost every day. And when I was released, they even came to my house on weekends to play. But that was only the first time around. Autumn into winter, winter into spring, a vicious cycle. Hospitalization, release, clinics, and hospitalization again. And before I knew it, even the classmates I'd once called friends turned into acquaintances. And then into strangers. As if with every changing of seasons, I was being erased from their collective memory. It seems to all those normal people, my very existence was an unpleasant fact. And so, it looks like I've been erased. I told y'all this was gonna be a little heavy. And I don't know, like, you always go into making videos wanting to kind of like be entertaining in some way, not like I'm a clown or anything, but you know, you try to be uplifting yourself and, you know, but I don't know how I'm gonna be able to do much of that with some of the sentiments that are present with these characters who are obviously going through it. I'd spent so many seasons, so many white overcast skies, without the want or need to converse with anybody. For that matter, my English textbook never changed from that of a first-year middle school student before the first midterms. That is where my time seems to come to an end. Early summer 2004, protagonist. This is where we kind of changed. We've done a time skip, and we are now the person that we will be seeing this game through for most of it. Also, like, get used to it. This game is just presented this way, and I really like it. I think that this is a really stylish way to present a visual novel when you want to work with a very confined set of visuals. I think that this is just a very striking way of presenting this game. It was really kind of like how I wanted to approach my first visual novel when I started making a visual novel. I kind of wanted to nick this style a little bit, but I'm not classy enough. 8 years later, early summer 2004, protagonist. Summer, flowing sweat. The gigantic electronic scoreboard in the driver's license examination facility lit up all at once. My eyes and everyone else's looked for our respective numbers. 237, 237. And of some 8 columns of lit text, sure enough, my examination number was shining in the midst. Clickety-clack. Don't talk back. A nearly empty train car, perhaps thanks to the beautiful afternoon. Almost alone in that car, I was heading back home from the examination hall. My left hand held a new traffic regulations handbook, and my breast pocket held my brand new driver's license. So now I've got a license as well, I muttered somewhat happily, but there were no strong feelings behind it. I never particularly wanted to drive a car. I never particularly had any motive for it. It was just that my colleagues in the Technical Institute both recommended that I at least get a driver's license. That night, when I told my parents I'd gotten my license, they merely replied with an, "I see." And when I asked if I could borrow the car just for a test run, they instantly and curtly said just one thing: no. While I didn't really want to drive the car or anything, the response was all too expected. Those were my parents for you. The next day, I awoke with chest pain and went to the hospital. Sickness and I generally had nothing to do with each other, which is why I found the ER waiting room to be utterly boring. And just when I thought they were through examining me, they ordered an X-ray and some blood tests. Then they left. And again, I was left waiting for a long, long time. I'd already polished off 3 volumes of Shonen Jump and was about to start on a 4th when they admitted me to the hospital right then and there. And it seemed that my new license, which still lay snugly in my breast pocket, would have to wait a long time for its turn to come. Autumn 2004, protagonist. I read that backwards. Go me. Right around when the all-too-nosy cicadas had finally gone silent, I once again found myself in the hospital as per usual. Of course, it wasn't as if I'd been there the entire time. I came and went, a futile cycle. My first surgery was a month before. After that, I started doing the 5-minute commute to and from the hospital by moped. And from then on, I was hospitalized, discharged, ordered to a clinic, and hospitalized again and again and again. While I still had no clue what PET or ERESA stood for, in no time at all, several months had already passed. As my appetite decreased, my medications increased. I could feel my own physical strength atrophying away. Atrophying. Atropopsis. His words, I don't know. I kept imagining that my legs were getting thinner. But the needle of the weight scale rudely informed me it's not just your imagination. And yet I kept looking on at myself with detached interest, as if it were happening to somebody else entirely, as if I were looking at a scene on TV or the like. My mind could not grasp what had so suddenly happened to my body. Nothing within me was telling me that this was real at all. And that's why, even though this was all happening to me, I kept looking on as if it were happening to someone else far away. Protagonist, winter 2024. Or 2004. Holy shit, this happened 20 years ago! A day of winter, around when the Christmas trees had vanished from the streets, I was discharged home as a kind of New Year's End treat. It seemed like an exercise in total transience, but still, it made me slightly happy. I traveled back to a home I had not seen in a long time in the midst of a freezing rain. Strangely enough, my entire family was there. My parents, who'd never so much as talked to me, came out to meet me, as if with terribly stilted smiles. And my little sister, with whom I had never had a pleasant word, had made my favorite cream stew and fried shrimp just for me. Are they all feeling guilty? This is either everybody's feeling guilty, or they know you got a real bad case of something and it probably ain't a good prognosis. That's the vibes I'm getting right now. They made me sit at the table. They peeled tangerines for me. They were cruelly kind. It was an impressive display. At this point, a little thought occurred to me about my new driver's license, which was still stuffed away in my pocket. That perhaps things would end for the license without it ever having known any use. And surrounded by a trio of stilted, strained smiles, I kept this thought as if it were someone else's business with dispassion, ambiguity, and total disinterest. January 2005. A new year began, and I returned to the hospital. But on this day, instead of my usual 4th floor room, I ended up in a conference room of sorts. They took me there. And then my father and the doctors had a little talk. I joined in. Well, they talked to me. So this was their so-called announcement. They said it in a terribly roundabout fashion, but they told me that I was going to die. I see. That was my only reply. I had no other words. It was the only thing that left my mouth from beginning to end. And the doctor's ballpoint pens flew across the paper as if in response to my words. Those were probably hospice enrollment procedures, businesslike to the last. My father was the same. So it's this simple. Was the only real thought I had. That day, I was transferred from the 4th floor to the 7th floor, from a 6-person room to a private room. It was a little different from the other wards, this 7th floor. First of all, the floors were sparkling clean, and second of all, the ceiling was higher than I'd ever seen it. The rooms were very nice and had large windows from which warm daylight streamed in as if by design. But the windows only opened a little. I tested them out, and my head would just barely fit out of one. The color of my ID bracelet had changed as well. The bracelet that I had worn since I was first hospitalized, the one that had my name on and blood type recorded on it. Its color had now changed from blue to white. I was gonna make a funny heaven joke there about it being heavenly now, but I feel like that's probably in bad taste, and this is really not the read-through to be making jokes like that. A high ceiling, a white vinyl bracelet, a window that would not open more than 15 centimeters. The TV programs celebrating the new year were still playing when I was transferred to this 7th floor. And it was the dawn of that very year that I met her for the first time. Winter 2005, 7th floor. There was this place, kind of like a lounge at the side of the corridor across from the nurse's station. This generally deserted place held a few couches and chairs, as well as a large TV. Stupid programs commemorating the new year were still being broadcast on that 28-inch screen, and there was a girl who looked absolutely bored watching that absolutely boring TV. Short, pink pajamas, a white bracelet on her wrist just like mine. Impressively long hair that almost reached down to her hips. Hey, do you find that interesting? There was no deep purpose in asking. Simply, I had nothing else to do, so I started talking to her. Not really. Was her reply only to me? She didn't turn to face me at all, and she kept looking on with boredom at the TV as if I didn't even exist. And don't watch it. Even as I thought this, I sat down in the chair next to her, and side by side, we watched TV. Nothing else to do, nothing we could do. We sat there silently and watched TV. New Year celebration programs as per usual, a useless array of comedians and oddities, and every so often the MC's stupid shrill laughter resounding dryly in the white, sun-drenched lounge. Say, tell me. The girl suddenly started talking to me, but her eyes were always glued on the TV screen. How many times is it for you now? What do you mean by that? How many times have you come here, to the 7th floor? Sorry, I have no clue what you're talking about. I see. So it's your first time then? So she'd seen my confusion about her question and come to the right conclusion. Then, since there's no one else around, and since it's my duty... Duty? There's this rule. Nodding slightly, she explained that the rule was that someone here on the 7th floor should tell newcomers the truth. I knew nothing. I understood even less. And as if I did not exist, she slowly started her speech. Then listen closely. Her words, spoken methodically, one by one, were a little different from all the ones I'd heard from the doctors about this place. In their businesslike, crisp syntaxes, they told me, this is a place where one waits for medical advances. This is a place where one heals one's heart. And perhaps they might have been correct in a general sense. But according to the girl, that was just the party line. The truth was that this 7th floor was the only place in the hospital where medical treatments did not take place. This was a place where you waited for your life to come to an end. Those were her words to me. I'd thought so as well. I'd felt it even before she'd spoken. See, this is my second time. Second time doing what? Coming here. And then she explained to me that nobody on the 7th floor stayed here from initial hospitalization all the way until death. While there was zero possibility of being cured, you were sent home if your conditions were stable. But if it worsened again, you'd be returned here. That cycle ended only in death. Whether it was at home or here on the 7th floor, always one of the two, you were going to die. No way to escape it, it seemed. And with that meaning permeating her every word, she informed me that this was her second time up here. I'm only going to say this once, so listen closely now. She continued speaking, all while staring at the blank TV screen. This wasn't idle chit-chat about when lights out was, or when the kitchen, or where the kitchen was, or anything like that. This was something completely different. The third time you're discharged home, resign yourself. There won't be a fourth time. You'll never go home again. If you ever want to escape, head towards the B station or the A station. Eat nothing. That is the simplest shortcut. You leave the smallest burden on your family that way. It was as if she was packed to the brim with matters like these. This was probably an oral tradition, relevant only to those who were going to die and kept by those who came here for that purpose. So is this the duty that you were talking about? Yes, that's right. So do you remember to perform it for a newcomer yourself someday, okay? With those words, she slowly stood up. She casually tossed her long hair and gazed at my nose. I have to go get my temperature measured, so... Then she turned her back and started walking down the corridor. Now, completely deserted save for me, the lounge held only the laughter from the TV and the white flowers by the windowsill. In the end, she didn't even look at me once. Now, you literally just said she looked at your nose! Boy, those date transitions move really fast. I believe that was January 10th. 7th floor. A few days later, New Year's celebrations were over, and the middle and high school students were beginning a new term. And just as ever, she and I sat in this lounge, staring blankly at the TV. This is boring. So it is. So we said, but the both of us kept our eyes on the screen. Hey, is this place always this way? I don't understand what you're getting at. I'm getting at how it's always deserted. Other than the nurses, doctors, and help staff, and other than her, I'd not seen a single person. Did everybody just go home for the new year or something? Do you really want to know? Well, I didn't mean... Then I won't tell you. We who disinterestedly tossed back and forth this exchange that could not even be called a conversation. The slight breeze coming from the window that would not open more than 15 centimeters. From time to time, her hair would sway, and, as if in agreement with the flowers at the windowsill, would too. This was how we killed time day after day, staring at the boring, good-for-nothing TV. Click, 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 click. Oh, here the two of you are, an elderly nurse said as she rushed towards us. From what I'd seen at the nurse's station, she was apparently the charge nurse of the 7th floor. Well, Miss Setsumi, any fever? I'm fine, no fever. Setsumi. So that was her name. You really shouldn't be moving around like this. Do you understand? Everyone's worried about you. Well, whatever. Come now, what kind of answer is that? Oh, children these days. The nurse continued to scold and henpeck for some while longer, and the girl named Setsumi, just pretended not to notice it at all. She simply stared straight forward at the boring TV, paying the fussy nurse as little heed as she could. I'll be coming here later to draw some blood, okay? With those words, the charge nurse went back to the nurse's station. Hey, you know... Well, mind if I call you Setsumi? I asked this as I stared at her white vinyl ID bracelet and at the blood type and the name written therein. Is something the matter, Setsumi? Why are you calling me that? Huh? You're younger than me. Hey, why am I younger than you? Nothing, that's just what I thought is all. It isn't that I was offended that she called me younger than her. It was just that no matter how I looked at it, I thought I was 5 or 6 years older than her. That's why I took out my driver's license from my breast pocket and handed it directly to her. See, I may not seem like it, but I'm 20. So you're younger after all. She only took a glance at my license before handing it back to me. I don't really get what you're saying. It doesn't really matter. I'm just a little older than you are, that's all. She murmured, as expressionlessly as ever. Her eyes were fixed on that boring TV. All right. Her eyes were fixed on that boring TV, all right, but it also felt as if she was gazing at something far away. After they'd taken my AM vital signs, I snuck past the nurses and boarded the elevator. When I got to the first floor, I walked out of the outpatient clinic doors and walked outside of the hospital. My goal was the place that I had been told about not long ago, the faraway B station. Not the nearby A station. It wasn't that I wanted to escape or anything. At the 7th floor or at home, none of us died anywhere else. That's what I'd been told. And this B station, which this girl named Setsumi had apparently been to many times. That's why, at least just once, I wanted to see this place with my own eyes. It's not as if there's going to be a guard on duty or anything. Even so, we were inhabitants of the 7th floor, different from the other patients. And thinking of vague maybes so early in the morning, I headed toward the station. My legs settled into a hazy gait as I glanced sidelong at the people commuting to school or work. After about 25 minutes of this, I arrived in front of the station, roughly 4 bus stops away when I calculated it out. Wow, there are a lot of people here, was my first impression of the B station. I stood out a bit because I was in pajamas, but I felt as if I could just buy a subway ticket. I'd be able to go anywhere, no question about it. I still had no idea why I'd been told to go to the B station and not the A station, but it looked as if it would be easy to escape if I really wanted to. She must have come here many times herself, so why did she remain on the 7th floor now? The station in the early morning. I stood there, thinking those thoughts as I watched the people rapidly passing me by. That night, after lights out, bored of manga and unable to sleep, I wandered through the hospital alone. Certainly, it wasn't supposed to be allowed after nights out, but we of the 7th floor had a peculiar kind of liberty. So, in the presence of no light and the pitch-black stillness of the lounge, that was where I found her. Hey, have you been looking outside today? Yeah. The darkened interior. She did answer me, but she continued to stare out the window as if she had not. I immediately launched into what had happened today. Oh, by the way, I went out to the station today. The B station, just as you taught me. I see. But her response did not change. I thought that she'd react with something because she'd been there before too. But now that I thought about it, did the fact that she was there, the fact that she was here mean that she had no intention of escaping in the first place? I'm going to be going home soon. What? She opened her mouth abruptly and spoke as if she'd seen right through me. But next time will be the 3rd time. So we may not see each other again. Huh. Yeah, I guess. Probably what she was talking about was a temporary discharge from the hospital. She'd told me that nobody was discharged from the 7th floor more than 3 times. Unlike the elderly, given the progress of our diseases, this meant all the more to young people like us. Her "we may not see each other again" was filled with that kind of meaning. Oh, which one have you decided on? Decided on? Where you're gonna die. When that word death came up so abruptly, I was at a total loss for words. I don't know. Haven't thought about it yet. I see. It's just your first time, after all, she murmured, looking desolate. Certainly, it wasn't as if I was going to exist here forever. Just like everyone else, I would be admitted and discharged, slowly grow weak, and someday I would just have to choose in the end, here on the 7th floor or at home surrounded by those fake smiles. I don't want to die at home, but I don't want to die here either. Then what will you do? I guess the only thing is to go somewhere while I still have the strength to. Somewhere. You can't be... This girl who was staying here on the 7th floor when she could have escaped any time, she wanted... When I thought of that, do you have any other place to go? Do you want to stop me? What? Or do you want to come with me? Well, no, that wasn't what I was thinking about. Then don't ask. She was staring out the window as she spoke, dispassionate, not looking at me once, the same as ever. But then, and just then, her usual expressionless face looked so very sad to me. I was a newcomer to the 7th floor, just recently taught that the 3rd discharge was the last, and she was a girl who soon was to be discharged for the 2nd time. I still did not feel anything real about what was happening to me. But would I too come to wear such a face someday? All right. And we're going to call it there for now. Again, I understand. This is a bit more of a somber tale than we are used to digging into here, but we'll get through it, everybody. We'll get through it with as few off-color jokes as possible. So that's gonna do it for now. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you have a nice rest of your whatever, and we will hopefully catch you next time. Bye.